here's a quick rundown of my implementation. I use a lot of Unity's event system calls, so I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between the two as I discuss things. Um, Basically what I did was I got the chair bottom here, which is the core of the whole construction. I set up 5 snap zones or 5 triggers that you can see here, which corresponds to 5 snap zones. When an object enters a trigger, which I'll show you the code right here. When it enters the trigger, it basically checks if there's anything currently snapped on the object, which is what is snapped is for, and it checks the tag of the object that currently entered the trigger. I have triggers set up on each of these objects. I'll show you right here. I have an invisible box collider that only is enabled when you pick up the object. That is the correct orientation for the object. This needs to be in the trigger when you snap it, otherwise the snap will be invalid. So basically what this does is it checks if the tag is correct. If it's correct, I get a reference to the object and its parent, which basically allows me to refer to it later on when I need to do some other function calls. I also changed the material to green, and I set the socket active to true, so that way when you let go it actually attaches to the object. Otherwise, if it's the floor, it does nothing, and otherwise it just turns all the materials for that particular furniture piece to be red. On trigger exit, it checks if it's snapped, and if it isn't, then it would also check to make sure, reset all the materials, and it would also check to see if the correct ID was there, and if the correct ID was there, make sure to set the socket to false and set the reference to whatever object would be socketed in there to be null. On snap, which is called by the event system, basically sets is snapped to true, and it resets all the game object parts that are part of the furniture part to be their original color. It also sets an ignore collision call to between the furniture piece and the chair bottom, so that way it doesn't cause any weird glitchy collision problems or anything. There's my reference to snapped object, and it also turns on a false collider, which actually sits in the place exactly where it would snap. It enables this. The reasoning why I did that was because the actual colliders for the snapped objects are ignored for some reason. I don't know where in the implementation it does that, but they are. So that way you could snap a leg, drop it, and it'll sit on that leg on the ground rather than just go through the floor. Other than that, I just increment the number of snapped objects, which I'll explain in a moment. And on unsnap, I basically do the same thing, reset collision ignorance rules, and set my snapped object to null, and turn off that fake box collider and decrement snaps. And pretty much this implementation is the same across all 3 legs. The only thing that really changes slightly is the array that is referred to when I use the material grabber, which kind of just does either 1, 2, or 3 different shapes to change the materials, and the actual ID check, which I have to change each time just to make sure it's consistent with the back leg, the front leg, and the back of the chair. The only other thing that I really implemented is the counter for how many pieces are actually snapped. This just increments in the event system every time something is snapped, and it decrements when something is unsnapped. And once there's 5 parts all snapped together, which is the full chair, I set it to where it ends the game by displaying good job on the screen, and the game loads to the end scene. I think that pretty much covers my whole implementation. Thank you for listening.